Today's heading is fish. Fish. I'm going to talk about fish. I would write this down. There are more than 30,000 species of fish. Tons of them. I would write this down also. Fish are cold-blooded vertebrates that have 3 adaptations that allow them to live in water. So they're cold-blooded. They can't heat themselves. They have a backbone, and they have some adaptations. If I'm going too fast, please pause. I would write these down. First of all, they have gills for breathing. Gills take in oxygen as water passes over them, and they release carbon dioxide. Basically, they're lungs for water. A lot of fish have to move in order to breathe. They need to be moving so that oxygen goes through their gills so they can breathe, the water passes through. Most fish have fins for different things: steering, balancing, moving. And each has a different job to kind of balance them. If you caught a fish and cut off one of its fins and threw it back in the water, it would struggle to move. And then most fish have scales for protection. What you're going to notice with our perch dissection is that the scales are really, really hard and really sharp. If you've ever cut open a fish, you notice that that's kind of a protective layer. I would write this down. Fish are grouped into 3 categories: jawless fish, cartilaginous fish, and bony fish. Jawless, cartilaginous, bony. Jawless fish, there are a couple examples. If you want to jot that next to jawless, that's fine. A lamprey, hagfish. These are the actual lampreys. It's not the big fish there. They have more like suckers than jaws. It's like that, kind of scary looking. What is cartilage? Before we talk about cartilaginous fish, we better define cartilage. Write this down. Cartilage is tough, flexible tissue that is softer than bone and provides protection. Cartilage is what your ears are made of, and the tip of your nose, and your sternum. It is tough tissue, but it's flexible. It is not as hard as bone. It's not as tough as bone, but it allows for movement. Right where your rib cage comes together, your sternum, that's cartilage, so you can breathe. When you breathe, your rib cage expands. It's able to expand because of that cartilage. You also have cartilage in your joints for padding. If you've ever heard of someone like tearing their meniscus in their knee, that's a cartilage pad. When you jump and run and all of that stuff, you don't want your bones to hit each other, to grind on each other. So there's a pad of cartilage in between all of your joints that cushion them. Your back, made of vertebrae, has cartilage pads between each one of your vertebrae. It's tough, it's flexible, it adds padding there. When you were a little kid, your skeleton was made mostly of cartilage. As you got older, your body replaced that cartilage with bone. Little kids can fall down in weird ways and pop right back up because their skeletons are much more flexible because they're made of a lot of cartilage, as opposed to me. If I fell down, it's difficult to get back up because I'm not nearly as flexible as Bendy. 3 examples of cartilaginous fish: sharks, skates, and rays. I would maybe list these here. Sharks have a cartilage skeleton. You guys have probably heard of stingrays. Skates are the same thing, pretty much, only they lay eggs instead of giving live birth like rays. So these are made of cartilage. They're flexible tissue. Yes, obviously. Most fish, 95%, are bony fish. Osteothighs, which osteo means bone. If grandma has osteoporosis, that means her bones are brittle. Now, fish, how do they stay afloat? With this thing called a swim bladder. Fish are going to stay afloat with a swim bladder. If you've noticed, if you go into the pool and you just relax yourself, do you sink or float? Okay, you're going to kind of float, but kind of sink. Okay, well, you don't want to constantly, like if you want to float, you have to constantly be kicking, treading water in order to stay at the top. Well, fish, when they do that, they burn a lot of energy. So what fish do is they have this thing called a swim bladder, which is this little pouch that they can fill with air. And if they fill it with air, they're going to float near the top of the surface. If they empty it, then they're going to sink more. So they can adjust how deep they are swimming based on that little bladder, that little pouch that they can fill with air. That's called a swim bladder. That is all.